So then the next fundamental question is, how would an abundant person think?
Today on Be Uplifted, we deep dive into a series with Dr. Joe Dispenza on how you can use the quantum mind and the quantum field theory to actually manifest millions of dollars. Dr. Joe Dispenza outlines how to create your reality in the quantum field. I have gone ahead and I have extracted some of these interesting tips on how they have helped me to even manifest over $100,000. This is a series for persons who are serious about manifesting. There are many ideas, many techniques, and many strategies explained in this video for those of you who are serious about change. Listen closely as we take a closer look with Dr. Joe Dispenza on how you can use his groundbreaking theory to begin to manifest today.
What happens with human beings is every thought has a frequency. Every thought produces a chemical. So if you keep obsessing about your lack of finances, your lack of time, your lack of energy, your lack, it's producing a frequency, and that frequency in the form of chemistry is storing that thought emotionally right in your second center. You feel guilty, you feel unhappy. The moment you feel unhappy, then you generate more thoughts equal to that feeling, which makes more chemicals, and you keep taking energy from the brain and storing it in the body. If you react to people in your life and you feel anger, frustration, whether it's traffic, the news, whatever it is, parents, whatever, you're drawing from this field, this electromagnetic field, you're tapping that resource and you're making chemistry out of it, and the field shrinks. So now, by doing that and living in survival, the body no longer is a magnet. So now you have very little energy in the brain. In fact, 5% of the energy is in the brain. Then 95% is stored in the body. Now the body's been conditioned emotionally. So a lot of energy in the body, very little in the brain. So in our work,
we want energy to be in the brain.
We want to move energy back up to the brain. So
what does that do when we move the energy from the body to the brain and the heart?
Well, this is a great thing, because once it makes it here, it's going up, right? So we do these different meditations and these different techniques to draw that energy right up to the top of the head. Now, when this energy shakes loose and it starts to move, the sympathetic nervous system switches on. And instead of releasing energy out like you're being chased by a predator or you're having an orgasm, that same energy is going up into the brain, and the brain switches on and it goes into these very high frequencies called gamma brainwave patterns. Now the person has an arousal, but the arousal isn't fear.
Not an orgasm.
Well, in the brain.
An orgasm of the mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's energy that's being released into the brain, and you can only describe it as ecstasy or bliss. So the energy of guilt that was stored from thinking and feeling in the same way releases, and it travels up to the brain and it's going back. And when it reaches the brain, what happens? You get more energy in the brain and it begins to produce that external field. So you're beginning to create a field around your body.
You can imagine the future as opposed to staying in something in the past.
Well, once the energy's moved, you're going to feel pretty blessed in that moment. In fact,
so we can transfer guilt, shame, insecurities into bliss.
Oh my God. Yeah, we do it all the time.
Momentarily?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we do it all the time. And the amazing thing is that rush of energy that's moving into the brain is changing the brain's physiology and producing that field. Now you have energy to heal. If you're truly in the business of change or creating your life, that's a big responsibility, right? So then the fundamental question is, and I ask myself this all the time, at what point do I stop believing that I create my life? At what point? When things go bad, then all of a sudden I didn't create that. That person is doing it to me, right? So if we can wire that in our brains, right? That our reaction and response to an environmental condition is causing us to go back to the past. That's what the emotion is. The familiar emotion is the past. And I'm on the journey and I catch myself doing that. If I'm truly in the practice every day, And I can cultivate a feeling, not on the spot then. That you're not prepared. Your meditation is the preparation of mind and body for this. So I don't get up from my meditation until I'm in love with life. I don't create anything that's going to be unlimited until I feel unlimited.
And I'm in that space.
And if I'm practicing feeling unlimited every day, I'm connecting to the emotions of my future, I'm out of the bleachers and I'm on the field. If you're in the bleachers and you're trying to not react to people and circumstances, you don't have the practice or the skill set on how to create that emotion because you haven't been practicing creating it. And why do we close our eyes and do it? Because the environment is so seductive. Why do we sit still and not move? Because you're going to want to get up and pee and eat and have a cup of coffee and feel. People who heal, people who have transcendental moments, people who break through, people who have the wealth, the freedom, when they look back at their life and they see all the days they chose themselves to show up for their meditation, when they look back at those past moments, they're not looking back at the easy meditations. They're not falling in love with the person who had the good meditation. They're falling in love with the person who sat in the fire. They remember those moments where they were like, I didn't give up on me. I believed in myself. I believed there was something on the other side of this feeling. I stuck with it. And all of a sudden it starts to change. And for some people it takes a little longer than others, but they're on it. And so then when they look back at their past and they see all those times it was hard and they went a little further, they're going to fall in love with that person. And now their future self, who's already transformed, is drawing their past self to them in love. And the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So when you're worthy to receive, it's not going to be on Match.com when you're looking at body parts and whatever else. This is going to be like ka-ching, like that came out of nowhere. Because when you're in survival and you're in separation and you're in lack and you're forcing and controlling and trying to predict outcomes, you're matter trying to change matter. And of course, it's going to take time for this to happen because you're creating a three-dimensional reality, and everything in three-dimensional reality takes time. But when you're creating from the heart, the coherent brain and a coherent heart, and you got that 5G Wi-Fi signal, it's not like you go anywhere now. The experiences are coming to, you're drawing the event to you. So we spend a lot of time bonding with our future emotionally. I have colleagues of mine who look at our data on oxytocin and they're like, listen, oxytocin levels go up during, in a relationship, the honeymoon stage of a relationship, and monogamy is created because of those chemicals, or a female mammal is bonding with her offspring. It's exactly right. I want our people, our students, to bond and fall in love with their future just like they do with somebody else. And when you're bonded to your future, no person, no circumstance, no thing is going to remove you from it. So then, if you fall from grace during the day, then the next question is, what person, what circumstance caused me to disconnect from my love in the future? And let me rehearse in my mind, if I have that same circumstance, how I'm going to overcome it. And now you're worthy of love. It's no longer the person or the event. It's just you're doing what it takes to stay in the emotion of your future. Your body is aligned emotionally to that future. So great doing it with a meditation. That's easy. But now the real game is open your eyes. Open your eyes and be in the initiation of life and stay in that place and just know that your future is going to happen. So being able to activate the heart and breathe in there and get the body out of survival and start working with it like it feels safe enough to create. Once energy makes it here, you're going to get some really good ideas. You're going to see things you never thought of seeing. You're going to feel things you never thought you'd feel. And the images that you're creating, what are they doing? The thoughts that you're creating, they're making more of those chemicals. And now you're feeling more of the feeling of your future before it happens. You're giving your body a sampling, a taste of the future before it's happened. Keep doing that enough times, and that feeling is going to become very familiar to you. So the formula then, to answer your question, is brain and heart coherence. And when you're in stress and you're in survival, when you're in danger, the arousal of the stress hormones creates a heightening of our senses. and we become materialists, and we narrow our focus on the material world, and that's reality now. And when we start trying to control reality and predict it, and we have the perception that things are getting worse, all of a sudden we're shifting our attention to one person, to another problem, to another thing, to another text. And every one of those things, there's a neurological network in the brain. When you're in beta, right? We're in beta right now. Your brain is busy integrating all this information. What I'm saying, what you're feeling, the temperature in the room, the lights, your back, everything else. Your brain's got to figure all this out. It's got to create meaning between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. If I said to you, Lewis, I forgot to tell you you're going to take a test today, you would perk up a little bit more, right? The light bulb would get a little brighter. Yeah. It's mid-range beta. But when you're in high beta, that's when you're really, really out of balance. When you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're impatient, when you're vigilant. The brain is in a very, very heightened state. And
that's high beta.
High beta.
It's when you're in a negative state.
Yeah, exactly. You're in survival. And people don't think they can control that. So they start analyzing in that state, and they make their brain worse. They get overly focused, overly analytical. And now you got to get beyond that analytical mind to get into the operating system to change those unwanted habits and behaviors. So when you disconnect from your environment and you close your eyes and there's less stimulation coming in, we play music in the background, you're not eating, you're not smelling, you're not tasting, you're not feeling, there's less sensory information. Naturally, this mechanism starts to slow down. And
knowledge is the forerunner to experience. The more people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, the how gets easier. And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. The practical application in understanding that philosophy, that theory, that intellectual knowledge, that information, once you start to apply it and personalize it and demonstrate it, the more you can understand that, why you're doing it and what you're doing it, you get greater value out of it. So we have people that are diagnosed with serious health conditions, that are nurses, that are cancer researchers, that are physicians, that are engineers, or just a person who just really wants to understand the content. Now it's so much easier to forget this information than to remember it. It's just, I always laugh at myself because I have to go back and relearn it again, and I think I know it pretty well, and yet I forget. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. So when our meditations get stale, it's because we forget what we're doing, right? So the person who really, really takes the time to study instead of watching Netflix, instead of scrolling through TikTok, instead of getting on their phone and doing mindless texts or whatever, they're going to set aside an hour a day and I'm going to learn this information. When they sit down to do the work, they're present. Yeah. They understand if they feel this emotion, that they're going to signal a new gene in a new way. If they feel the other emotion, they're going to down-regulate that gene and up-regulate the gene for their disease. So now it's an understanding. Yeah. If I rehearse how I'm going to be mentally, I'm going to install the hardware in my brain. If I keep doing this, it's going to become a software program. I'm going to start acting that way. Okay, if I say I can't, it's too hard, I'm too tired, I don't feel good, those are the things that stop me. Okay, but what if I just start saying anything is possible? I believe in synchronicities. What if I, with my intention and attention, just really get clear on that? Would that be the new voice in my head? So now, the person who's truly present and not thinking about their shower or the emails they have to do or their cell phone or their text or when they have to take their kids to ballet or whatever, you're going to get to all of that. The person who's truly present, if they follow the instructions, we've seen them have very significant changes. First, in their subjective experience of themselves. Like, wow, my back pain isn't there. That's kind of weird. Or, God, I slept better last night. These small indicators are feedback to tell you that whatever you're doing inside of you is producing a result outside of you. Keep that up over a period of time, and you see instrumental changes taking place in the person. Now, another person who has had a series of traumas, been abused in some way from childhood, is facing a lot of health conditions, a lot of emotional and psychological conditions. We don't want them to heal in 1 week. We want them to work on overcoming those emotional states, and those are the victories. So sitting down in the meditation, and when their body starts getting agitated or starts getting anxious, instead of quitting and saying, I can't meditate, because that would be the extent of that person, just be curious. What's on the other side of this? Can I lower the volume to this emotion? My body's craving this emotion. Let me settle it down into the present moment. That would be a victory.
So that person with a lot of trauma, there's a moment in the meditation where they feel uncomfortable. The easy thing would be, hey, I'm going to stop. I'm going to put on Instagram. I'm going to get a coffee. I'm going to do anything else to distract me. You're saying that's the key moment. You want to sit with that and hopefully break through that.
What I'm saying is there's no such thing as a bad meditation. There's only you overcoming you. People think I'm doing my meditation wrong. No, you're doing it right.
Even if it's difficult.
That is the moment that is going to define the person. So then the person goes, oh God, I feel really uncomfortable. I'm not a good meditator, or something wrong with me. It's my trauma, it's my past, it's my parents, it's whatever. The person who says, no, I'm going to sit in the presence of this anxiety, and I'm going to keep working with my body, and I'm going to keep lowering the volume to that emotion. Now listen, you keep lowering the volume to that emotion, you're going to take your attention off that past problem, because you only put your attention on that past problem because of the emotion.
And I'm happy to say that in the last year or so, we've seen a significant replication of some of these abnormal findings to prove to us that people can make it a skill or a habit.
And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. So as you suppress analytical facilities, you can program anybody to do anything. So then what really happens for most people before they even reach for their cell phone, and by the way, the statistics are 86% of the people in the Western world, first thing they do is they reach for the cell phone and they connect to everything that's known. So the device is reminding them of things that are known. And every person, every object, everything, every place is mapped neurologically in our brain because we've experienced it. And then we have an emotion associated with our coworker, with our boss, with our ex, with our whoever. And so the moment we start responding, now we start feeling the same way. So now the environment is actually controlling the person's feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
And anything that controls the way we feel and the way we think, we're victims to. So something's programming us to think and feel a certain way. There's nothing wrong with that. You should check your text and do whatever you need to do. But the first thing in the morning, if the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is open, why don't we program a new behavior? Why don't we rehearse a different way of being with our children, with our spouse, in our Zoom meetings, when we're alone, when we're in traffic? Is there a better way to evolve our experience? So if you're truly in the game of evolution, you're truly in the game, like one lifetime, one day. What am I working on today? Can I respond a different way to this person? Can I think this way instead of that way? Let me be conscious of my unconscious thoughts. Let me not be in a habit. Let me stay away from certain emotions. Let me practice feeling these emotions and see if I can maintain it. Now you're in the game. You're out of the bleachers and you're on the playing field. So it actually happens even before the cell phone. Because what most people do is they wake up and the first thing they do is the brain is a record of the past. They think of their problems. And those problems are just memories that are etched in the brain that are connected to certain people and objects at certain times and places. The moment they think of their problems, they're thinking in the past. Then when they think about their problems and they feel unhappy, now their body's in the past. And if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, wow. And then the emotion that's associated to it is now the body's in the past, because thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. And how we think and how we feel creates our state of being. Now here's the problem. If you can't think greater than how you feel, and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, then you're thinking in the past, and your life will stay the same.
You see, this is the subject of thoughts turning to things. And humans want to call it manifestation in the moment it bursts into the thing, or into the experience, or into the tangible, when there's so much that has happened along the way first. And so there are two reasons that you might not be aware of the difference between thoughts turning to things and instant manifestation. One is you just might not be sensitive to your energy, which is not the case with you. The other is you might just be so accustomed to the feeling of alignment that the feeling of alignment is just the way it is, and then when things manifest, it's like, oh yay. And that is the case with you. It's interesting because you called us over there. In other words, we're sort of looking over there, and there you were. You were undeniable because your expectation was very strong. And that expectation was in place before that moment. And so there you were, and did you notice, we certainly noticed, that there was no hesitation. Your expectation was so strong that you were almost in the air on your feet before we even got the point finished.
Yeah.
So.
And so, how do I stay there all the time?
You don't, but the way you improve the odds of being there more is by reveling in how good it feels when it does happen and never lamenting when it doesn't. It's all about the book of positive aspects rather than the book of trying to fix things that are broken. What if, because there are pieces of resistance on your path always, and what if your inner being, who knows where you are in relationship to where you want to be and knows where all of those pieces of resistance are, what if your inner being calls you to something that you would call unwanted on your way to something else that you would call unwanted, on your way to something that you would call greater clarity, on your way to what you want? Your inner being can't call you to a place that you're unwilling to go. That's what we were talking about with our friend. Your inner being can't assert a vibration that's so strong that will overcome your resistance. But your inner being, wise inner being, knowing what your resistance is, knows that you could come to this piece of resistance, which is slightly less, and then to this piece of resistance, which is slightly less, and to this piece of resistance, which is slightly less, which is usually what the pattern of thoughts turning to things is. But what if from where you stand to where you want to be, there is no resistance? That's what you want to call instant manifestation. Good clarity. Did you get that? But don't you sort of kind of have to make peace with wherever you are? Don't you sort of want to say, my path of least resistance shouldn't matter to me because it doesn't matter to my inner being? That's like saying, I'm going to go on a vacation and I'm going to get on the cruise ship in Fort Lauderdale. But first I got to get to Fort Lauderdale, and then being bummed that you're not just already in Fort Lauderdale. I either got to drive or I got to fly. I want to go on this cruise, but I don't want to do what it takes to get to Fort Lauderdale. You don't want to meditate. We're going to be after you today. You don't want to do what is required to be on the brink of instant manifestations. You just want instant manifestations. Well, cut it out. Start enjoying the journey, because there is satisfaction in releasing resistance, yes? Isn't it fun to sort of get where you're going through paying attention? Don't you like to be guided? And really, we know for sure that there's not one of you. Let's talk about just a physical excursion or journey somewhere. There's not one of you that wants to just go directly from where you are to there, when there's so much wonderful stuff to see along the way. So many encounters and adventures and people to see and fun to be had. The manifestation that you're looking for, the instant manifestation that you think you want. We're just going to enjoy this for a while before we tell you. Is only your excuse for the journey anyway. And the journey is so wonderful, even when it isn't. Because even when it isn't, it shores up what you want. So we're not really big fans of encouraging you to want instant manifestation. First of all, because it's fiction. And next of all, because it's more fun to have a journey than to just teleport somewhere into an experience. You do that in your dream state all the time. How do you like that? Yeah, you just show up somewhere, a little disoriented. People you don't know. Nothing really connects quite as well, but it was instant. You went to sleep and bam, there you were in a strange new world. Esther used to wake up on a really regular basis and say to Jerry, oh, I love the continuity of my life. I love waking up in this bed and knowing how I got here. Remembering what was before and eager about what's coming next. Yeah. Something more?
Yes, two things. For whatever reason, when you were just talking about whatever, trust came into my, just as a word to talk to you about, like, what is it that I can tangibly trust? I have an intuition, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on what it is that I'm trusting.
Well, earlier when we were talking about, there's doubt, which doesn't feel good, which is not a vibrational match to what your inner being knows. And then there's hoping, which is a little closer. There's less resistance in hope than doubt, but there's still resistance in hope. And then there's belief, which is less resistance than hope, but there's still some resistance in some belief. But knowing, that's when you move into the no resistance zone. And we would call knowing trust. We wouldn't call doubt trust, and we wouldn't call hope trust, and we wouldn't even call belief complete trust. But when you know something, and so what trust really is being, if only for a moment, where your inner being is. When we use the word trust, and when you use the word trust, when most use the word trust, what we all really mean mostly by that word trust is that a sustainable feeling of knowing. But you don't start out with a sustainable feeling of knowing. You start out with a doubtful feeling of knowing, and then a hopeful feeling of knowing, and then a sort of more believing feeling of knowing, and then a knowing feeling of knowing. And so it's degrees, isn't it? But the more you know the existence of your inner being, and the more you know, this is the most wonderful thing about what we get to teach you or to interact with you about. There is not a shred of evidence to the contrary of anything that we speak. So it's not hard to trust it once you allow yourself to meditate and raise your vibration and then receive that guidance. You just have to know. And once you've had enough experience where you do know that, we say to people, start out with easy things. What happens with so many of you is you've got some issue that you want to get to the bottom of, or that you want to resolve. But because it's an issue, you've thought a lot about it. And you've thought a lot about it from your awareness that it isn't what you want. So without even meaning to, you've got all this resistance on this issue, and then you want to start with that issue to gain your trust. Well, that's the last issue you should start with to gain your trust, because it's the hardest issue to start with to regain your trust. You've practiced. The subject of money is a hard one because you've practiced not having enough. Even the issue of love is a hard one because you've used the word when you don't mean it. Don't you know I love you? Or you've heard it from others. And so you got to come to some vibrational awareness of what you mean. What it really comes down to is you are lovers. You love. That's who you are. And anything less than that is not who you are. But you know what's so interesting? Wherever you stand, you often believe you are right. And even if you don't feel love, you still think you're right. So you don't get to that feeling of trust because you think you're right, but you're not in sync with source, so you don't feel love. And so it's not paying off for you because you're missing some important elements. You can't be in hate or anger or frustration or doubt and be practicing trust. You can only be in love and appreciation and positive expectation and fun and lightheartedness, you see. So let's be really accurate about this. This is big. This is why you're reaching for this. Trust comes from what you thought was going to happen happening. Stay tuned. So that means if you're expecting something negative to happen, and it does, don't you say, I knew that was going to happen. So let us redefine trust from our vantage point. We want you to replace trust with alignment. Rather than go for trust, we want you to go for love. We want you to go for clarity. We want you to go for wholeness, because it's really easy to come to expect bad things to happen when bad things have been happening. Jerry used to say, get me once, shame on you. Get me twice, shame on me, because I should have seen it coming. Well, we're not really teaching that, but we get what he meant. When something happens and you're able to make the correlation between what you've been expecting and what comes, a lot of people who are not tuned in, tapped in, turned on, they can't get past your expectation. So your expectation evokes from people. In other words, that's what the law of attraction is. It's attraction, it's attraction, it's attraction. So you get what you think about, which means you come to trust those outcomes. But it's only when you factor in your alignment factor in what you're coming to trust that you really have your ability to deliberately create.
Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you have all of your attention in the present moment, you're conserving a lot of energy to create with. If I'm talking to you and you're thinking about where you're going to go for lunch and who you're going to go with and how you're going to get there, and I'm talking to you, you left the present moment and your attention went to some future. And your energy will go down and you won't be able to comprehend what I said. If you start thinking about what you should have said at the staff meeting 3 days ago, and I'm talking to you and your mind is back in the past, you're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past. So people are constantly siphoning their energy into a familiar past or a predictable future because that's where their attention is. And the stronger the emotions that we feel to certain problems and conditions in our life, the more we pay attention to them. So we give our power away to our ex, we give our power away to that big problem, and that's creative energy that we should be able to use to create a new future. So then when a person's sitting in a meditation and they're doing absolutely nothing, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and their body for the last 10 years has been going in traffic and getting angry and frustrated in traffic, and now they're sitting in a meditation at 8 o'clock in the morning, the body's going to say, hey, you're off schedule. I'm used to suffering and getting angry here. Yeah. So the body's going to start looking for that emotion, and it's going to start influencing the mind, and you're going to start getting images and memories just so you could feel that emotion. Like now the person's back in the past. But if they become aware that they're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past, and they settle the body back down into the present moment, that's a victory. And those victories add up. And you're telling the body in that moment that it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and that's a victory. And then people get frustrated and they say, I can't meditate. Oh, really? Well, actually, you're doing it right. That's actually what meditation, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But if you trade resentment and impatience for gratitude and freedom and joy, and you start making those chemicals in your meditation every single day, I swear to you, you'll get familiar with that. So the process of change is unlearning and relearning. It is breaking the habit of the old self and reinventing a new self. And we use meditation as a way to change our brain and body to be different, be greater than the environment, be greater than our emotions and habits, and be greater than the predictable future and the familiar past. So meditation is a way then to get us in the right state of mind and body. So when we present ourselves to the world, we're a better expression of it. And then practicing and staying aware your entire day so that you can actually master something about yourself. So you could only talk around these concepts. You really have to really apply them to really begin to see the fruits of your efforts. But common people around the world are doing the uncommon because of it. When you finally have everything you want, there's only one thing you're going to ask yourself: how am I going to contribute to the world? How am I going to make a difference? So we use different tools to help people to get to that point. But if the person's doing the vision board and they're saying, when I get my new car, I get my new house, I get my new relationship, then I'm going to feel so great. Well, then they're back to the program, waiting for it to happen, for them to feel the emotion. They're believing their outer world has to change in order for them to feel better. There's no effect of drawing the experience to you with that way. So the person has to use those tools to get them into the emotional state for them to feel like it's already happened. Now think about this. If you get up from a creative process and you feel grateful, you feel a love for life, you feel a joy for existence, you feel a passion for the moment, you will not be looking for your future because you'll feel like it's already happened. It's the moment that we start feeling those self-limiting emotions that we feel separation, and then we start looking for it again. Well, then if you're waiting, you're not creating, you're in separation again. So then whatever it takes for you to move into a state of being. And what is a state of being? Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain. Feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. The moment you remember your problems, a memory is a record of the past. You're thinking in the past. Every one of those problems has an emotion associated with it. So all of a sudden you start feeling unhappy, you start feeling bitter, you start feeling frustrated. So now your body's in the past. So then most people then create a state of being that's connected to their past. And if they're in the familiar past, then they are going to crave the predictable future and they're going to fall back into routine. So then We want people then to get very clear on that vision of their future, however they do it, and begin to combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion. And the stronger the emotion they feel from the vision they're creating, the more altered they feel inside of them, the more they're going to pay attention to the pictures in their mind. And now they're remembering their future. And biologically, it's exactly the same as remembering your past. In fact, if you're not being defined by a vision in the future, it means you're making your past more real than your future. You're falling in love with your past. You're more in love with your past than you are with your future. That you're believing in your past more than you're believing in your future. When you get to that moment where you have that feeling, that's your compass. Because that feeling is going to drive your behaviors. It's going to drive more of those thoughts. And when you feel that feeling and it's visceral, no person, no thing, no experience will stand in the way between you and that vision. And you will be initiated by the universe into wealth. You will be initiated into health.